My name's Chris Day, and I've been commissioned to respond to the anti-slavery medallion at the V&A Museum Wedgwood, and this piece that I've created is called Fragmented Truths. My proper job's a plumbing and heating engineer, and then I do this on the side, as some people might say, but it is another career, which is a glassblower, and I create pieces of work that are about anything from slavery, racism, migrant crossings, anything that I can create a conversation with. So I was asked by Gabby from Kwanzaa to produce a piece of work, a commission, based on the medallion at the Wedgwood Museum. And so we had a trip out there, and I'd seen these medallions, but only on the internet. I'd never actually seen them in the flesh. And I thought they'd be massive, but they wasn't. They were just small little pieces. But what they represent isn't small at all. It represents a movement at the time when slavery was at its rife, but you had these few people in society that wanted to change the whole direction of where it was going. I'm not an historian, so I'm not going to go through all the facts and figures of what it meant and where it was from, but it's more what it meant to me. I can remember sitting in the restaurant with Gabby and was talking about things and just mulling over what this commission might look like. And we got talking about going to the beach and finding fragments of ceramics. And these fragments, what purpose were they, what history was behind them, where they came from. And I can remember as a lad digging potatoes and finding bits of ceramic. So I'd already had this connection with how Gabby found these pieces on the shore to me finding these pieces in the soil. These fragments, and that word fragment just stopped there, like truths. The truth behind our own history, it is very fragmented. When you go to museums and institutes, is that you might only see these two little medallions. You might only see a bowl. You might only see little pieces that aren't really telling the whole story of our ancestral past. And that's what really gets me going when I create these pieces of work, is that I want to try and create a dialogue where people can interact with these things and start a discussion. Fragments that have been passed down through the ages, through museums, are sometimes not what our history is all about. I could name any museum in England, but they've only got these fragments of our own history. But those indentured in a huge trafficking of our history. So the piece of work that I've created is not just telling the story about the medallion that's in the V&A, it's telling the story of incarceration, slavery, it's telling the story of us. As a glass artist, I'm using molten glass, which is about 1200 degrees, and I'm blowing the molten glass into a copper cage. And for me, the copper cage represents so many things: barriers, segregation, constraints, but also slavery. The glass is trying to break free through these copper cages. So it tells a story without me even trying to say anything. But for this commission, for the first time, I've used colours that I wouldn't have used, which is the blues. The blues representing obviously the colours of Wedgwood in their porcelain slips. I'm using the cages, but the cages I've made are representing the actual anti-slavery medallion. They're just round. The medallion's round, so I've made the cages round. I think these were the only things that I picked up on, and also the chains. On the base you can see the chains that I've used to represent the chains that you see in the medallions. I could have done a figurative piece, but I don't do figurative, and this is the only ways I could be able to produce this piece of work. I mean, for me, glass and ceramics, they work both hand in hand. They're both made from chemicals. And I suppose that's the main difference, is that a glaze that you put onto a ceramic body has got exactly the same chemicals that you find in glass. It just works in different ways. I suppose for me, it's just a conversation about slavery and how the past has covered who we are now today, but we don't see that in society. And it doesn't matter which museum you go to, we haven't got the coverage of what other people have in the histories. So for me, it's being in the Wedgwood Museum, is that what opportunity do you actually get to actually expose all these histories, or be able to have conversations. When people walk in there, they'll see all these beautiful pieces of porcelain and ceramics, not knowing what Gerards of Wedgwood actually did. You know, they'll just look at the beauty. But behind all that beauty, unfortunately, there's a beast. And this is what I bring forward, is the beast. Hopefully that people can have a conversation in a safe place and remember, if not anything else, just remember where and why this medallion was built for and what it was for. It was to create a conversation back then. Just like my work today, hopefully it'll create a conversation.